Hey, this is the franchise Shane Douglas. Welcome to Appalachian Expose. As you know, I get to bring my friends on here and guys that I've run the roads with and have a ton of respect for all these guys because anybody that's done this, I know how tough it is. And today we get to have with us the Stro, the Maestro. This is a chance for me because we've known each other for what, 25 plus years or longer?
At least, yeah.
These are the conversations that, so you fans know, these are the conversations that we have on the road because the first thing you ask somebody is, how'd you get into the business and all those types of things, right? So like for me, that's fascinating because we all have our own way in, and I always find the similarities in the stories, but then these crazy differences in the story,
Right.
because it's easy to think, well, everybody did the same stuff I did, and then you hear it and start to go through. So let's start with who trained you?
Oh, God. 4 scores and so. A couple of people actually. Gene Anderson.
Yeah, I just talked about Gene a few minutes ago.
Yeah, Mr. Wrecking Crew, and he was in Oakley and Lars and
Sure.
the original Andersons. Cowboy Nelson Royal.
Yeah, I remember Nelson. Sure.
And
Is he still alive?
He passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, okay. He wasn't a spring chicken then either, but yeah, good guy.
Matter of fact, it was at his farm.
Yeah, which was where?
In Mooresville, North
Mooresville?
Carolina.
Okay,
Outside of
yeah.
Charlotte.
Are you from the Carolinas originally?
Yeah, well, I was born out west.
Mhm.
I guess I was in a military family.
Gotcha.
And then moved out to North Carolina. On my dad's side, he's from North Carolina. My mom's from out west.
I'm assuming your dad was in the military?
Yes, he was in the Army.
And
Vietnam War.
Oh, wow. And what was his role? Like, my father was a combat engineer in World War II. What was your...
Well, he was on the front lines, Agent
Front lines
Orange and all
infantry?
that. Yeah.
Oof,
So he saw the heavy stuff.
I guess. Is your dad still around?
No, he passed away a few years ago.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Tough. We're old guys, but it's tough to lose your parents, man.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, you would like him a lot. He was,
the Army guys, I can listen to those stories. My dad, I grew up listening to those types of stories. And did your dad have it's probably a rhetorical question. Like, my dad had this immense amount of experience in World War II. He was a master sergeant, combat engineer.
right.
And I was his only son. So, like, growing up, like, he would tell me snippets of stories, but never the full story. Sort of like, blah, 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 and leave the room.
Yeah.
He had, my dad came to Northern Africa with Montgomery and Patton, served under Patton, and came up through the underbelly. And they had, as soldiers would do, they would loot the town after they took it over. And my dad had looted a photo house.
Right.
And had a camera, so my dad has these amazing first-person pictures from World War II.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
it's come to me. And there's one picture that my dad would always show. And these pictures were only about, 3 inches by 2 inches. I mean, pretty small photos.
Right.
And he would get to this one picture, and as I was younger, I didn't catch on, but as I got older, 12, 13, 14 years old, I would notice he would get to that picture and he would tap that picture and leave the room.
Mm-hmm.
So I always look at that picture, and it looks like a beach scene. There's like a back corner of a building, a hill, trees on top, and it gets more and more sandy as it comes down, and it looks like a beach, sand, and a rock right in the middle. And he would so as I got like 17, 18 years old, I said, Dad, you always do that. You leave what is this picture?
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, look at it. And we kept looking at it. I kept looking closer. I'm like down like this. I said, it's a beach. What is? He goes, that's a pile of human ashes.
Mm.
And the rock is a burned up human foot.
Wow.
And look, I get goosebumps every time. I've told that story a million times because I can't, as a father, I can't imagine having witnessed something like that.
Mm.
And, I'm sure your dad, with the things that he's seen in Vietnam, the horror stories that we've heard from there, did your dad, like my dad, put it in a box and sort of shove it behind him?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was. It was like you were saying earlier. He would speak a little, then get quiet, and lay.
Yeah, I would. As I got older, I realized what my dad was doing to leave when he'd leave the room because he'd start to tear up.
Right.
It brought back so many memories. I guess they weren't allowed to have post-traumatic stress syndrome and the things that we hear of today. So, well, thank you, your father, for his service. Sorry to hear he's gone. Is your mom still here?
Yes, she is. She's doing well.
Good for you.
Yeah, so I look out for her best I can.
Nice.
Going back home and everything.
Yeah. How old is your mother now?
Oh, she is 70.
Yeah.
About 71.
Yeah, good. It's my mom passed away 11 years ago, and like I said, I don't care if you're 90 years old. You know, losing your parents and stuff,
Yeah.
but you still have your mom around is fortunate.
So I look out for her, and then my brothers and sisters. I got a big family.
How many?
I'm the oldest of 15.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, 7 brothers and 7 sisters.
Wow, good lord! Can you imagine feeding that horde?
Unbelievable.
Jesus.
I try to get the first plate because I know.
Yeah, right.
Forget about it. Huh?
Yeah, your mother deserves a medal just for that, right?
Oh,
Good
man.
lord.
Her and my dad, man, they love kids.
Yeah.
You know, and I and I'm the only wrestler in the family.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What types of careers for the other siblings?
Oh, there's mechanics, cosmetologist, doctor.
Wow.
I got a brother in every branch of the service.
Wow. Yeah. I guess you got them all covered, right? With 15.
Unbelievable, yeah. So we're all in different things, but it's all good.
So, what? First of all, how old were you when you trained?
Oh, jeez. Well, actually, I was wrestling collegiately, but I kept that on the down low while I was training, being in business, right? And,
what school?
I was doing some wrestling at Pembroke State, and then went wrestling camp and Iowa State, the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah, great wrestling program out there.
Which was great because I was a huge Dan Gable fan.
Yeah.
And I just watched videos of him training for the Olympics. And
was it Bobby? Did Bobby Shane also go to Iowa? I remember Bill Watts always talking about Bobby Shane and actually met him.
Bobby, yeah.
But those guys that had that, that they were all, bred from that type of program like Iowa. If not Iowa, like in that same system.
Mm-hmm.
What lured you? Like, what was it about professional wrestling, being a collegiate wrestler, that you were looking at that? Because there's literally hundreds of millions of wrestling fans around the planet. There's something about two young punks like us that said, maybe I'm gonna give this a try. What was the linchpin for you?
Well, I've always had a deep love for the business since I was little. And, my grandfolks used to bring their house and we watched some of the territories.
Sure. Yeah.
Like Florida and Texas. And,
yeah, great stuff.
And it got me hooked. And then, when I started with my academics and doing collegiate wrestling, it just furthered that love for the business. And which I had a good run. I almost qualified for the Olympic team.
No kidding.
I came that close. My qualifying match, right? We went into overtime, right, with the guy, and we both slipped off the mat, and my knee hit the gym floor, right? And you got the reversal at the very end, right? The point system.
Sure.
Oh God. But and by the time I rehabilitated my knee, of course, it was season's over and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it just being a part of that, it elevated my passion for business. And
sure.
When when I was being trained professionally, Ken Shamrock was in the class.
Okay. Yeah.
In class, and then later on, I went hearing about the MMA pancreation over in Japan.
Right.
And which later on, once I started doing some wrestling, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Stan Lane hooked me up with the PWFI guys, so I got to train with them. And Dan Severn was part of the class, so I got to meet him and train with him, which was which was great because he just got through doing the Russian Sambo.
Yeah.
Style, and world class act too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But at the time, they would have a show like once in a blue moon. It wasn't as active as it is now with UFC and Octagon.
Right.
So I wanted to get back to the business and, make further progress. So actually before Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I was doing the indies for a while. And some of my first matches was with like Wahoo McDaniel.
Sure.
Which he taught me a lot.
Yeah.
He really did. And funny, I could tell you the story. So we're having our match, right? One of the matches, and somewhere during the match, I forget where, I pick him up in a vertical suplex, right? And which was no easy task.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was.
I couldn't believe I did it myself. but after a match, I'm sitting there lacing my boots, right? And here's Wahoo. He comes, sits down beside me, shakes his head. He said, "Kid, I haven't been picked up like that since Harley Race."
Is that?
And that's how we hit it off. And
Sure.
you know, and
Yeah.
I got to travel with him. He told me some great road stories. And
Those guys were all fascinating. Like
Yeah,
just listening.
man.
I think because we're such fans for the business,
right.
and you're sitting in dressing rooms and cars with these guys and listening to these things that you remember as a kid, these great iconic angles and matches and storylines.
Yeah, and you know, and like it wasn't too long ago you were watching these guys.
Right.
And like for example, here's a story. Blackjack Mulligan and Ric Flair had a match at one of the towns for Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling.
Sure.
And I bumped into Blackjack there at the gas station, right? And he was getting drinks to get to the next town.
Right.
So, but he was kind of worse for wear. He was really tired. So I helped him carry his drinks to his car. And then, like years later, after being in the business, and we bumped into each other, right? And he remembered that night.
Did he really? Yeah.
And after the show, you know, he bought me a drink after the
Yeah,
show.
yeah. What a big guy, huh?
Yeah, his hands.
Yeah, those hands, just everything about
God,
it,
man.
massive. And you know, it really wigs me out now is like because I grew up watching Blackjack, right? And they used to say that Barry was his son. I'm thinking, I don't see that. Like they didn't even look alike, right?
No, not then. Because
Barry-
Barry's lean. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen? I mean, Barry now is like you're looking at Blackjack.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's like a clone.
Wow.
Amazing. Man.
And Barry is another guy I really looked up to
Oh.
because I mean, for a big man, he was amazing what
Yeah.
he could do. And I heard that he didn't really in the gym that much. He was just naturally.
Yeah. It was, when he was a babyface, he was one of the guys. He and Brad Armstrong were two of the guys that I watched that, to me, made it look real.
Yeah,
You
Brad
know,
was amazing.
selling and the way
Yes,
they
sir.
moved and just so fluid in and out of stuff that when Barry turned heel, like I was thinking like he's not going to be anywhere near as good as a
Right.
heel as he was a face because he was a phenomenal face.
Amazing.
And then he took the heel, right? And for Barry, like I remember being on the road back then, Barry would often disappear. Like he just didn't want to be on the road, so he'd go home.
Okay.
And take a couple weeks off, and then you see him back, and you weren't sure if he was back for a day, a week, a month, or a minute. You know, it was in and out, in and out. But just what an in-ring performer. I've always had
Amazing, yeah.
just a real respect for the guys in our business that. I hate to use the word because it's probably overused, but like that have mastered the craft. And you see, like Brad clearly mastered the craft,
Oh,
right?
man.
Hardy mastered the craft. Barry mastered the craft. There's so many guys that come in and just can go to the ring and create magic.
Right.
And those guys were all. It seemed like it was a lot more prevalent back then.
They're on a whole new level.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. And they, it's like watching an art form take place for
Yes.
these guys in the ring.
Yeah, it's like if you put a brush in their hand, you can see them painting a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me with Brad, the way he would move around, like for his impeccable drop kick here every time.
Amazing.
He would hit that and then he would like do that lateral, like move around like
Oh, it's
you
like
would-
a cat. Yeah.
like from amateur wrestling, right? The way that you
Right,
moved in
yeah.
amateur. I never wrestled for schools. I wrestled in clubs
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, but that was what lured me into wrestling was the chaining and
Yes.
the way to putting it together to make it make sense and watching how do they go from this to that and reversing to that and I'd rewind it and watch it again. And those guys, it seemed like they were breathing air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they'd get in there just and push you whichever way they needed you to go and think like God, I could think it for two of us. So like back to your training days. So like you're at Nelson Royal's camp, and you said that Gene and Lars and Ole and all those guys are involved. Like Bruno would come to Dominic's school.
Okay.
Is that how it was? Like would the Andersons like pop in on Nelson's school or?
Yeah, from time to time. And then, Ivan had his school, Indian Trail, not
Yeah.
too far away from there. So
Yeah.
I was at the right place at the right time where I could soak up all the knowledge.
Sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
But you try to explain to the kids in the business today how critically important that was. You're sitting in a dressing room and you may not even hear the words, but you see Bruno sitting over there setting his match up. And it's not they're talking for hours and hours. Like, okay, work the leg and do this and that, and then walk away. And then they'd go to the ring and have this incredible match,
Yeah.
right? And again, I always felt like so insufficient, like watching those guys, like Dominic, and like you go back and watch old tapes with these guys that were instrumental in my training, and you see them like it's effortless. Like they go to the ring and it's just somehow they go out there and do it and come back and get changed, get in the car and drive to the next town. And me, like I always had to work at it. I got to think it through and like in the ring, my brain, like what do I do next? And it was just like a constant pressure and stress for like the first 5 or 6 years.
Right.
Steve Austin had asked me this question. I'm curious to ask you, like, with an amateur background and now you're in the professional ranks. How long before you started feeling comfortable in the ring? Like when you go to that point where you got the butterflies before you go to the ring, and you used to get nauseous as a kid and that kind of stuff. How long did it take for that to wear through and like you felt comfortable inside the ring?
Oh gosh, well, it's funny because they say some things you'll get used to, but I to this day I still get butterflies for.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I still, I guess, get some form of butterflies. It's more butterflies that you want to have a good performance,
Right.
want to give the fans a good show. But like, I'm talking about that. I got to wrestle in 2 matches, and you're like really sweating it out. Like, do you ever go through a period like that? In the
Oh
business?
God, oh yeah, all the time, yeah.
And how long before?
I'm such a perfectionist.
Right.
And funny story. When I was training, first started training. Gene's sitting there, his Diet Pepsi and chicken, and watch us do our thing. And I'm in the ring with a guy, and he says, "Okay, kid, wrestle." Right? And I'm thinking, gosh, I don't, this type of wrestling.
Right.
So I do the most god awful drop kick you can think of. It was terrible. He said, "No, kid, wrestle." And then the light bulb hit my head. Like, oh yeah, okay. So I double legged the guy, bow and arrow,
Right.
And all the boys pop. Wow. Right.
Yeah. And Gene lit up, right?
Yeah. But that kind of broke the ice to where, like, okay, all right, I get it. I get, what he's talking about.
Gene used to, like in the old NWA, he was the guy, this is in the days before technology, right? So when it was time to go for the match, or if they needed the match to go because they needed more time for the later match or whatever, Gene would walk down to the ringside and either flip his tie or flip his pencil. And so, like, I'm thinking about now, you go, excuse me, those seltzer waters. Go back and watch those old matches, the NWA matches, and watch when Gene comes down the ring. To me, it's like so glaring obvious. He comes out his tie and stuff. But I just talked about this on the interview I did prior with James in England. Gene was there the night that I wrestled Cornette.
Right.
Cornette came up with this idea, and he's pitching it to me, and it sounds like a joke, right? It sounds like something like a Soupy Sales segment or something, like, get the pie in the face, and that's when you slip on the banana, and then I'll pull out the powder, and I'll do this. And I'm going like, that doesn't sound like my kind of match, right? Somehow I get talked into it or told I'm doing it, and we go out and we have this match, and I come back, and the first person I run into is Gene Anderson. Right?
Oh, man.
Gene's at the curtain, he's looking, the old curmudgeon face right into me. I walk in, and I go, "What?" He goes, "That was the worst thing I've ever seen." And now at that point, I settle up. I'm ready to lose my mind, right?
Oh,
but Gene was one of those guys that you had to get to know him.
Right.
Right? But like once you got past that gruff exterior, he really was a big teddy bear.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Like a really loving guy and cared about the business and cared about the kids learning, right?
Yes.
So I'm curious, like, how long were you in training before and doing the indies before you got the invite, got the big break into the business?
Oh, God. Well, I was in training for quite a while. And it was just, the way things were done, you know what I mean? Set up the ring. And there were times where we would train without the mats. Mm-hmm. Guys, I remember doing headlock takeovers like forever on the wood.
Logs,
Oh Lord, and I'm like black and blue. But it took a while. But I remember my first match. I think it was Kannapolis, North Carolina, against L.A. Stevens, who was the ACW champion at the time, and he was also trained. He trained him too.
Right.
And I was. You're talking about nervous.
Right.
Oh my God, it's like,
This is your first match.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm greener than a John Deere tractor. And so, but Stevens, carried me through it and, everything, thank God. But I just, that's earlier when you said that's talking about me more comfortable in the ring. And that kind of broke the ice for me and in the first match and everything. So, from then on that, I felt better. Even though I'm still learning
Sure.
at the time, I felt more comfortable being in there and Because it's like the old adage goes, there's no substitute for experience.
Right. Yeah.
So, you have to live it.
Yeah. Well, I talk about this all the time. Like how blessed we're. Like, who wouldn't want to be 20 years old again, right?
Oh gosh.
It'd be fun to do. I'm thankful to God that I was 20 years old when I was 20 years old.
Oh.
Because I broke into the business at a time when literally every dressing room we sat in was feature Hall of Famers. There's Harley, there's Bruno, there's this guy, there's that guy. I mean,
like the who's who, right?
Yeah, I mean, today we throw around words like legends and icon, I think way too easily, too frivolously.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys, looking back into those dressing rooms, I'm thinking like these guys all truly were like icons and future legends, right? And
Right.
Hall of Famers. And the way that our business is conducted, especially back then, before we got the luxury of flying, we're getting in cars and driving. Sometimes like UWF was a 10,000-mile-a-week territory at times.
Oh wow.
So you're sitting in the car for hours and hours and hours. Well, you have nothing to say to these legends, right? So that you're listening,
Right.
and taking in these incredible stories, like you said with Wahoo, and it all pushes into your head, and you hear it all someplace, and then 2 years down the road, somebody says something, and that instigates that story in your head. So we have not just the in-ring experience, but we have the experience of having traveled the road with these guys,
Oh, yeah.
and sitting and listening to these stories. And it may not to the fan out there make sense, but when you're in the ring and you get that blank spot, right? I go, okay, what am I going to do next? What I would do, like once I got comfortable in the ring, is I would think, what would Bruno do right now? What would Harley do right now?
Right.
And I would calm down and think about it. I'd see in my head there was something they were doing, and I would do that. And that would get me over that brain fart, right? Okay, now I'm back into my schmooze. I know where I'm going with this. But again, that's the luxury of having spent thousands of hours in cars with these guys, hundreds of hours in the ring with them, and then thousands more in dressing rooms with them, and watching them set their matches up. And Pez Watley, I always tell this story. Pez, he was my first sort of angle in UWF.
Oh man, I love Pez.
Oh, it was great, and so easy to work with. And we come back from the ring after about a week or so, and we get in the dressing room, and he goes, "Yeah, Shane Douglas, you're killing me with those punches." And I didn't know if he meant I'm stiffing them or I'm under hitting, So he takes Dominic always did the European stuff, like the uppercuts.
Yeah.
He never taught the punches like are ubiquitous in the business today. So Pez, he said, "Didn't you ever learn to throw a punch?" And I went, "No," and he went. So walking towards the shower, he stops and pulls the night lineup off, takes the tape, turns the paper over, tapes it against the wall, and said, "Punch it," on the brick wall.
Right.
I said, "I can't." He says, "What do you mean you can't?" I said, "I'll break my fingers." He reaches up and throws this perfect punch,
Oh, man.
snaps that paper, and pulls his hand's fine. It was like watching somebody cut a lady in half. I'm like, "How the hell did you do that?" And he said, every night, we'd get done with our match, come back, and he'd take me into the shower, put that on the wall. First couple nights, I'm going like, is he ribbing me? Like, is people laughing at me right now? And that was where I learned to throw a punch. We lead off with the knuckles and get the feel. But I had that luxury, being in the ring with him, in the dressing room with him, learning from him, and then from there to the next guy, then to the next guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
At the time, you don't get it. I'm sure the same with you. But for me, I didn't even realize, when I went from Pez to say Murdoch, that I was going this way.
Right.
I was being slid up the card a little bit. I'm just wrestling another great wrestler tonight. I'm gonna have fun. But then you look back, and after 6, 7, 8 nights a week doing that, and the double shots on the weekend, how could you not have learned?
Right.
You're in the ring with the Andersons and the Nelson Royals and all these litany of guys, right? How not?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And talking about Pez Watley, I was a big fan of his for a long time. I mean, and talking about drop kicks, he had one of the sweetest drop kicks.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And for a well-built guy, he can
And
move.
thick, yeah.
And he was when he was with the ring crew at WCW. Actually, he was. I don't think many people know about this, but he was actually mentoring me. We would have long talks, and he would give me fill me ideas of what to do.
Yeah.
I would look forward to being on the road and bumping into him, and we sit and talk. It's this amazing guy. Man.
Yeah, again, because you're for me, it was I had having watched wrestling since I was 6 or 7 years old. These were all guys that I had seen on my television at home. Before you're in the business, people on that TV are different. They're special. They're up there. They're up here somewhere. They don't seem real on that TV. And then you're sitting here and talking to Pez while you're in the
Yeah.
ring with the guys like that and learning. And like, there were times you'd have to stop and go like, am I really living this?
Exactly.
It's crazy, right?
Oh, yeah, many times. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Like living a dream. Man.
Yeah. So how long from the time that when you trained and you're having these matches locally and you start to move up the card the same way? I'm trying to remember like what year it was I first met you, like in WCW.
Oh God. Well, at when I started doing matches with WCW, it was like a nightly thing, and I was back and forth between Smoky Mountain Wrestling,
Right.
and then I went to Memphis. Larry Booker, one of the Moondogs, helped put the good word in for me from Memphis with
Right.
Lawler and Jarrett and William Regal, who I got to be friends with.
Yeah.
Him and Dusty were interested at one time bringing me in. And they compare my. Here's another story on itself, right? They would watch some of my matches and they would kept comparing my style and stuff like that to Gorgeous George, right?
Right.
And what in the world?
Yeah.
And
For the fans out there, know that he was a huge star, like one of the hugest stars in wrestling in the 1950s,
Right.
early 60s, and really was one of the groundbreakers for taking wrestling from black tights, black boots, more towards the entertainment side, right?
Oh yeah, and he's pretty much put wrestling on the television map
Correct.
years ago.
Yeah.
And it just kept snowballing, after Regal and Dusty put the idea in. They were going to bring me at one time to feud with John B. Bad
That would have been nice, yeah.
as his antagonist, right?
Sure.
And which I was looking forward to that, but something happened with the booking and that goes. But so Bill Dundee, superstar Bill Dundee, when you had a mutual friend with Regal and they started talking about me doing the Gorgeous George thing in Memphis, right? And I was perplexed, it was like this whole talk of Gorgeous George. So I went to my grandpa, right?
Yeah.
And he was out in Oklahoma, right? And he has a horse ranch and I was telling my grandpa what's going on. And he just looks at me, right? And he says, "You didn't know?"
Yeah.
And,
So you weren't familiar with Gorgeous George at this time?
no, I mean I've heard the stories
Sure.
and everything, but I didn't understand why people compare me to him and the look and everything.
Sure.
And he broke that. He smarted me up. He said, Gorgeous George was my granduncle, and they were amateur boxing buddies back in the day before he broke into business.
So you're related to?
Yeah,
No kidding?
yeah, so, yeah.
That's
My
insane.
granduncle, yeah.
And you didn't know that at the time?
I had no idea. Had no
Why
clue.
is that? See, you hear these kind of like weird connections in the business that you
Yeah.
think that's wild.
Yeah,
I
it
guess.
blew me away, right?
Yeah.
But that's what inspired me to don the name Gorgeous George III.
Yeah.
Well, out of honor and respect for him. And there was a junior, but he was no relation. But
Right.
he was another great one too. Junior
Yeah.
was great. Him and Lawler had a great feud in Memphis.
Is that right? So I was even unaware that George had a son that got into the business.
Yeah, but I don't think he was related to the original. But he just used the George name,
right.
right? But yeah, so that inspired me to do the Gorgeous George III.
Now the piano, that was a shoot, right? Like you're playing the piano.
Oh yeah.
I mean, tell me, because like this to me, like I'm looking at it again, like thinking everybody does it the same way, and hearing like now you got this music background, you got this connection to professional wrestling.
Yeah, I was in theater for a while before I got into wrestling.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, my theater teacher could have run my neck.
Yeah.
But she wanted to pursue it and
Yeah.
eventually get into acting, which I've eventually got into later on. But
Right.
so I was like, I was in like the Cats play. They used to have in Broadway, the Cats.
Right.
I was in Shakespeare, like Macbeth,
Wow.
Hamlet, and Alice in Wonderland, just a variety of different plays.
Well, there is a connection here. I guess in a distant way. One of my professors at college, we had to take a thing called freshman seminar at
Okay.
Bethany. And the one I wanted was One Nation Under Sports. It was full.
Yeah.
So the next one was adapting fiction for stage and television. So okay, I'm thinking about wrestling at the time and dabbling around with it. So I thought maybe I'd learn something, right? So the guy his name was David Judy. He was the chair of the theater department, the fine arts department. And so whenever I start getting ready to go into wrestling, I go see Dave, right?
Oh, nice.
And we're on the stage at Bethany, that's where we're meeting, and he said, walk across the stage for me. So I walk across the stage. No. He says, do it again. So I walk across. I know how to walk, right? I'm walking. He said, what am I doing wrong? He said, you're walking. He goes, you're walking like Frankenstein. Right? Square shoulders and everything. And, it really got me thinking. I would go down like on every couple of weeks and see him and stuff. How to move and walk and things you would never think of coming into this business, right? As to how to find the audience or find the stage, on his play. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're not going to read your lines to the background, right? You want to read it to, evoke to the audience. Dave Judy gave me all those things. Dave ended up passing away shortly after I had broken into wrestling.
Oh, wow.
And I did get the chance to talk to him, and he had seen me on TV. And in typical theater professor, right, he's giving me critique, right? Well, you did this wrong, and you did that wrong. And he was a great, great guy. But, that connection really did overflow into wrestling. Not so much prior to our generation, but as it started coming forward and sports entertainment started making its debut, those types of things, like finding the camera and being able to look into that camera and connect to the person at home. Those were things that the generations before us didn't so much ever think about or have to.
It's fascinating, really, the similarities with theater and what we do.
Correct, yeah, it's crazy. Did you take lessons as a kid, or is this something you picked up later with the piano playing?
Because I did a variety of things. With theater.
Because piano is not an easy instrument to pick up.
No.
Like the drums or something, you can just bang away on.
It took some time. I played drums for a bit. Mm-hmm. And of course, sang a few lines in the theater and everything. So, how that about started with the Maestro thing, right? Was that Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man Randy Savage,
right,
contacted me while I was doing some tours in Puerto Rico for Carlos Colon.
Sure, yeah.
And it's funny because I'm in a condo down in San Juan with Sean Morley, Val Venus, right?
Yeah.
And we're just getting ready to go to another town for a deal, and you get the phone rings, right? And Macho Man's on the phone with him, right? And he thinks it's rib. He thinks it's like
yeah, because everybody that's a Macho Man, right? So
right.
It could be anybody on the other end.
And he's like, he looks at him. He said, "It's the Macho Man. He really talks like that."
Yeah.
I thought he was ribbing me, right? Like,
yeah.
Hello, and, hey, how you doing? And he was telling him and Hope wanting to bring me up to meet Bischoff and
right.
the guys. So I'm like, wow, cool. So they flew me from San Juan to Virginia for the tryout. And the first tryout I had was with Jeff Armour, who later on did the old NWO sting, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I got to meet Paul White, Big Show, and everybody, and Hulk and Randy were really cool.
Yeah.
And see everybody there. I mean, and Eric was cool at the time, but they were going to do a deal where, because Macho Man was just emphatic into Gorgeous George. He was one to give the character to his brother Lanny, and have me come in there in a different deal.
Right.
Which I was cool with, because I knew Lanny could,
sure,
pull off. But matter of fact, one idea was floating around. They wanted me to be on Thunder in Paradise TV show.
Is that right?
As a Reverend Headlock, dressed in all white with a big book in my hand. I'm like, I was like perplexed, like how is this going to work?
Yeah.
But it didn't. For some reason it didn't pan out. So I went back doing Gorgeous George. Jake and I did tour Mexico, AAA,
right,
Triple Mania, and everything. It was great working with the luchadors.
You mentioned Randy Savage. When Dominic had sent, we were training for maybe 4 or 5 months at Dominic's school. Really had no idea what we were doing, other than could take a bump and things. And Dominic stayed in contact with like Pat Patterson and Strongbow and those guys.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that really was like the biggest break for our business, right? Was that we were able to get a foot in that door, even just doing jobs, but being there, you're being seen by how many people.
Right.
And get up to the first night, and Dominic must have told whoever he talked to there, Pat or whoever, that it was Mick Foley and I, and there were like 4 or 5 of the other guys from the school. Mick and I worked every day. There were 4 tapes that night.
Nice.
We worked all 4 tapes. That was the night Mick got his jaw broken by the Bulldogs.
Right.
And my first match was Randy.
Okay.
Now, I'm a 20-some-year-old kid. You're sitting in the dressing room. Here comes Randy Savage, right? The top deal in the business. And you're scared to death. You don't want to screw up and make him look bad or something. And I'll never forget it because he came to me, as intimidating as he was, and he said, "So what do you do, kid?" And I said, "Well, whatever you need, Randy." Because Dominic told us, keep your mouth shut, right? So I was even afraid to open my mouth, and I finally went, "Whatever you need me to do, Randy." He goes, "No, give me an idea of some of your moves." So I told him like two or three things, and I got it. And he walked away. So we go to the ring to have the match, and he gave me a tiny bit in the middle there, just a tiny bit, gets his heat, ends up spitting on me and everything at the end of the match. And we come back, and you've done this. I mean, we've been in the same position where you walk out in 15,000, you suck, you're going to get your ass kicked. And it's really, you get a little thicker skin because of that.
All right.
And we come back from the ring, and I'm going back to get changed because I have another match coming up. And here comes Randy.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you." And he kept bowing and saying thank you. And I said, "Randy, it's not necessary." And he looked me right in the eye. It's drilled into my head, and I've used it ever since, and I always remembered it. He said, "It is necessary." He said, "Always remember, kid, if you want to have a career in this business, always thank the guy that's putting you over because he's letting you have that career."
Right.
And he was so gracious, and then he killed it because he's doing a whole stay on screen with Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
He walks over to the door and he taps on her and he goes, "Liz, honey, it's Randy. Can I come in?" I went, "Oh, dude, you just killed the whole gimmick." But they were gracious. I mean, I got to work with that first night. Him, then Butch Reed, then Jake Roberts, and the last one was Randy. Wow. Not Randy. Paul Orndorff with
oh goodness.
Brain fart. His manager, Bobby Fulton. Bobby. Why do I have trouble with names anymore?
Heenan?
Bobby Heenan. God almighty.
Oh,
I didn't forget
man.
that. Jesus, God. You get all these names in here that swirl around. Same thing with those guys. During the Pow Driver, I sort of pogo stick myself out and pull it back up.
Oh, man.
And he and Bobby came back and were just, "How'd you do that? Thank you so much. You made us look like $1 million." And that really stuck with me. I mean, those 4 guys I wrestled were 4 of the top names in the business.
That's amazing.
And a young punk like me to come back and thanking me and, just being over the top with it.
That's awesome.
And really dug in. What was your first experience in going in front of that big arena and knowing you're going to basically enhancement talent?
Oh, my God. I would say when I was doing the nightly deal with WCW, 2 guys that really went out of their way to help me, when I was first starting with Mick Foley and Max Payne.
Yeah, I remember Max. Whatever happened with him? I've never run into him anywhere, seen him anywhere.
Yeah, not a long time. I haven't
good
either.
guy.
Yeah, really great guy. And him and Mick went out of their way to give me a few things in the match. And, man, we really didn't have to, right?
Right.
I was like, man, that's how I broke the ice with Mick. And, man, it was amazing.
Yeah, the first time you walk in front of those big audiences, right? We come from the indie shows where hundreds, maybe 1,000 or 2, and then you walk into these arenas that are hanging from rafters, right? And for a second, it does take your breath away. And then like for me, I used to always wonder because we'd come back and you'd hear somebody there, "Hey, did you see the girl in the 3rd row wearing the black?" I went, "Oh yeah." I mean, I saw my opponent, I saw the referee, maybe. And I don't remember even seeing the ropes. Like I was just focused on what we were doing, But it's what a, how do you say it without sounding like too sappy? What a cool thing to be in an arena full of people, and you know that all those eyeballs are on you and your opponent.
Right.
And I saw an interview with Gene Simmons one time from Kiss, and he said about the Rio de Janeiro show. 250,000 people. So you got the feeling you could just tell the crowd, "Kill," and those 250,000 people would come and killed you. I never felt in command of the audience like that. I would see Steamboat be able to. If he wanted that lady in the 3rd row to stand up, he would get her.
Yes.
So somehow played them like a conductor.
Amazing.
It was always amazing to me, like watching that kind of stuff.
Unreal, man.
What was in your career? Like, what was the biggest wow thing for you, the thing about the business that you would never would have thought that once you got into it you saw and either liked or disliked that one thing that just made you go, wow, like blew you away?
Oh gosh. Well, one of them I have to say was the whole debut of the Maestro thing.
Mm-hmm. The way it was all laid out and the pageantry of it and everything.
Right. And they made this elaborate platform with the baby grand and candelabra.
Yeah.
And I'm having to kick the bass in. I'm playing because Jimmy Hart worked with me in music, right?
Right.
It just so happened that the sheet music he gave me to play was the old Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
Was it really?
Yeah. So I'm playing this, right? But I'm trying not to look down as they're I'm being lowered, right? Because everybody looks like ants, right? And not much in heights, right?
Yeah.
And he had a harness in my back. I worked with a stuntman a few weeks prior.
Yeah.
Kind of like what he used to do with Sting.
Sure.
As a safety precaution, in case something would happen and the platform go down, I could propel myself up the harness.
Right.
And I went to Brett for asked permission to do that because that was not long after Owen, and I had respect for the family. You know,
Sure.
I was, if he told me no, I would have went to Bischoff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But he gave me the green light, and I went with it, and just being there up above everybody else, high in the arena, it was breathtaking.
It starts all coalescing in your head, like somebody built all this for me, and these people are all watching this. Was there a second in doing that, like you're like, I gotta pull this off, right?
Right. I was trying to zone myself out.
Yeah.
Just trying not to think about, just keep doing my thing, because the more I thought about it, oh jeez. You know?
Yeah, sure.
One time the harness didn't come off though.
Is that right?
I had to go straight to the ring for a match, right? And I couldn't get the darn thing to come off my tights.
Yeah.
And I'm in the ring bumping around the ring, and every time I would hit the
Oh,
canvas.
you mean the what do they call that? The circle pin.
Yes.
The thing that was,
and I felt brutal. I couldn't wait for the finish.
Now I'm curious, like, let's go back to the Owen thing for a second, because I mean, it's just one of those indelible things in your brain.
Oh man.
I was at home that night, and the ECW's head of merchandising called me and said, "Are you watching this?" And I wasn't. I was at home just doing whatever. And he said, they're saying that Owen just fell to his death. Mm. And I'm thinking, well, what a tacky storyline, right? So I go get on the computer like the other thing, like, what? I mean, why would this? This is weird. And like there was, first of all, in your brain at that point, you're thinking nobody can die from professional wrestling, right? Like, there's, all this safety equipment and everything. And you get online and start reading the different comments and things, and it's starting to sound like that this isn't an angle. And within a short period of time, you begin to realize, like, holy shit, this really happened. And Owen and I were pretty close friends. I was just sort of like flummoxed by it. Where were you when you first heard that, and what was your thoughts on it?
Well, I previous to that, when I was trying out for WWE, mm-hmm. Owen was there with me because he tried out. He was helping Benoit try out. Mm-hmm. They had a match together, and I had a match with Scotty Riggs.
Okay.
And Owen was with me during that time, and I remember we would laugh and carry on. And
he was a character.
We pulled the rib on Bundy. Went after Monday Night Raw. We just dropped off Sid Vicious and Bertha Faye. And it was like Jonestown, Pennsylvania, I think. And it was like pouring rain.
Yeah.
We're in a hotel, and I'm driving the van, right? Owen's in the passenger side, and Bundy's in the back in his bags, right? And Owen just helps out of nowhere and says, "Hey, brother, floor it." I'm like, what? He said, "Take off, man." So I said, okay. So I take off, the bags all over Bundy, and he's like chases in the parking lot, and I'm like scared to death. Right. And Owen's like losing it laughing so hard. And years later, I met Bundy at another show, and he's coming to him like, "Oh, he's gonna kill me, right?" But he puts his arm around me, laughs.
Chris is a big old
the rib, right? But it really hit home, man, because Nelson Morrow was good friends with Stu, and he would tell me stories about the Hart family, and
sure.
And it's just that's how I got to know the Harts. And I remember when Owen passed. It wasn't long after that Rude went in. I remember sitting there with Brett and Hennig Kurt, who was another great guy.
Right.
We were just like, and I had lost fiance that was being trained by Lalani Kai. Leanne Runner was her shoot name, but her
What happened?
Virginia. She had a brain aneurysm.
My God, how old?
30.
Oh, jeez.
She had no idea she had it. You know what I mean?
God, that's
She
awful.
came down to see me for that weekend because she had a rough court battle over an accident, and she knew I could cheer her up, right? And, but yeah, it was just one of those things, and we're all sitting there, you know, mourning our losses. And
Right, Rude and Owen. We went to the funeral, and it was really surreal because, you know, the Hart family had, first of all, this huge house
right.
that sits up over the hill and looks like right into, like the king looking down over his minions, right?
Oh, man.
Beautiful old home, and they had this big tent, almost like a wedding type thing set up.
Right.
And, you know, we're all, you know, dressed in our black suits and everything. But I remember getting into the night before. Everyone was in the bar hanging out, and it, you know, sort of obviously very dour. The next morning we get up and we had to have passes and things again. We had the entire city locked down, and the entire city was out. You know, it was like the king died or something. You know, again,
Right.
thousands and thousands of people. But I remember getting there and walking into the funeral home. Nobody likes going to the funeral home, right? But I had a sister that passed away when I was pretty young. The same year, like in 6 months, my great grandmother, my grandmother, then my sister died.
Oh,
and ever since I've had this real like, I can't go into funerals. So I get just like there's something like a force for that.
I'm the same way.
It's awful.
Yeah, it is. Same way.
But out of respect for Owen, walked in there and it didn't look like him in the casket. And I remember like looking at that and I had to get away from it. I had to go sit down and like get away and just, you know, sort of veg it out. And, you know, let's try to get into it because Owen, like, without, you know, ending on the down note, Owen was such a gremlin.
Yeah.
Right? He was always, if he's looking at you smiling, you better check your back. There's probably an M80 or something in it, right? He's up to something. You know, just one of those crazy stories. But again, like for me, like I just could never fathom somebody dying in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And then hearing like you with this same type of setup, this Sting and everything, and you know how obviously south that could have gone at any time.
Oh, you're right.
You know, like the danger of it. You know, I think a lot of times we were put into positions. My brother was a set designer in Hollywood, and you know, did the sets for like the Pit in Silence of the Lambs and the Bat and the Natural.
Oh, nice.
My brother was an incredible. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, right? And he was an incredible artist. But
awesome.
I asked him a couple times, like, you know, especially when all the politics of the business. I said, "Give me as a stunt guy. I can take falls and do this and, you know, do that." And
Right.
he said, "No, you have to have a license for that. And you have to do all this stuff for it and everything else, right?" So these guys that we're seeing in the movies doing this, coming down on those hoists and things like you were hooked into, they've been trained in all that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we're like, "Okay, Stro, here you're clipped in. Okay, when you get down, just pull that thing. You'll be good." And you're like, "Wait a second, like, it doesn't sound very safe to me, right?" It's,
Oh my God, my
yeah.
legs were like shaking the first couple of times.
I bet. I'm not afraid of heights either, but like even before Owen, like doing stuff like that, like if they had asked me to do like kind of an entrance or something, I'm not sure I would have been cool with that.
Oh right. Oh my God.
Again, just because you're trying to evoke the character, but in the back of your head, you've got to be thinking at any point, even before Owen, like this is a machine. Like this machine can fail, right? And that's a long way down. I remember walking into the Kemper Arena a month or two after WCW had a show there. It was the night I wrestled Flair. And if you remember Kemper, you walk down that long underground, the long driveway that takes you down. Like the Kemper Arena is dug down into the hole into the building. And so like from the road, from the surface, Kemper Arena doesn't look very big. It's, you know, just a couple of stories high.
Right.
And then you go down in there. I remember walking out to the ring and I looked up and like I got nauseous. And then my friend fell from there. Like it was high. Like wow high. You know, just those crazy things in the business. What was the aside from like that kind of an entrance? Was there ever a time that you were in a match or in a position feeling that something was probably a little too dangerous to do?
Oh God. I remember one time I literally saved this guy in the cage. I mean, it's steel cage match, right? And the cage just wasn't safe.
Right.
And he went to climb the cage, and next thing you know, the whole side of the cage is like getting ready to come down, right?
Yeah.
And
And one side goes, they're all going.
and I remember grabbing him by his tights. It's like, no, you're not gonna die tonight.
Right.
And I literally pulled him in the cage, side of the cage back in.
Yeah. Got over to hit the fans, right?
Yep, right, yeah. 'Cause,
Jesus.
I mean, it was heading that way, and I'm like, no, this ain't happening.
Oh, yeah.
So, but he thanked me later. But I mean,
I guess.
it was like one of those things, like, God. But I mean, they fixed it, but.
Let's dabble a little bit on the politics of the business, because we all unfortunately have interacted with those.
Right.
When I was young and naive, thinking that when you get into the business, learn your craft, be good at what you do, and the rest sort of goes on autopilot. What was your first inkling of the politics of in the business, and the things that you've seen or had done to you? Like how do the politics impact themselves on you?
Oh man. Well, quite a few times this happened, but I remember like in Memphis, right? Which I learned a lot in Memphis. I really did about psychology and everything. But I was told, actually, the funny thing, I was told I was wrestling too much.
What? Yeah, God forbid, we went to a wrestling match and a wrestling match broke out.
Yeah,
Right?
which should be funny, right?
Yeah.
Supposed to be just wrestling heel, right?
Yeah.
And I never really. Now, when WCW, I didn't really experience the politics too much until, which I didn't, that I know of, basically, but the feud I had with Ernest the Cat Miller, which was really taking off.
Yeah.
And he was an entertaining guy. It was great to work with, and we do house shows, and I'll tell him, like, you do what you do best, I'll do what I do best. And it just worked.
Yeah.
Well, I remember we were being told by the agents that we're getting more over than
Yeah.
guys, and we had a whole pay-per-view planned for a follow-up from the James Brown thing, Super Brawl, and there was talks there thinking about bringing in Vanilla Ice for the sequel, right?
Nice, yeah.
And I'm like, right, we're all excited, and then we get the agents comes up to them, they're cutting everything, and because it's getting more than that. So.
And obviously, in that moment, you're going, what? Like, we're doing too good? Like, that seemed counterintuitive, right? And
yeah,
I remember when I was with Steamboat, we had the same thing. That for time immemorial, the world title was always the main event. The tag title semi-main.
right.
Well, Steamer, and I credit all to him because me and Brian and Steve were following his lead. But Ricky would go out every night, like we said earlier, just like a conductor, be a maestro. Just put together a great match, and literally stealing money. But I remember, pretty sure it was Savannah when Grizzly Smith, Jake's dad, was the agent. And he came to Ricky and he said, I was standing right there, and he would always talk to Ricky, right? And Grizz had that real deep voice, big guy, 6'7", 6'8". And he said, okay, Ricky, you guys are on the main tonight. And Ricky said, it was Sting and Vader. He said, or did they not make it? He said, no, they're here, they're just going on earlier. And Ricky did this, looked at me like, what the hell, what?
Yeah.
And turned out, we found out later that, Sting and Vader would go out and they'd give a great match. 6-7 minutes, right? They'd go boom, 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 home, out. And Ricky would take us out every night. It would be 45, 50, 55 minutes.
Right.
And he'd crowd up, crowd down, crowd exhausted. And so they didn't want to follow that. And for the first time in history, the World Tag Titles became the main event and the other way around. Wow. And it really did switch tables on us. And it was a learning experience for me because now the crowd's seeing what they think is the main event, Sting and Vader. They're exhausted. They're ready to go home, right?
Yeah.
And we go out and, the crowd is... You could hear crickets, right? I mean, it was like they're ready to go. And Ricky goes, follow my lead. And he starts, just doing this walking and talking and pushing and shoving with Brian and Steve. And I'm just doing the same thing he's doing. And we get about 10, 12 minutes into it. We start to see the crowd going, Just getting a little bit interested. Still ready to go, but they're just coming along.
Right.
A few more minutes of this, about 15 minutes. You see the crowd, like, I think, if I remember, somebody yelled something out. And Ricky looked at the referee, looked at me and said, ring the bell. And we started our match then and went from there forward. And I remember thinking, like, if it was me just coming out here, I just said, okay, Stro, beat me, throw me down and pin me, right? You know, they're not into it. And Ricky just took it. He wasn't going to take failure as the answer. You know, we're going to go out there, we're going to get this crowd. And just, again, watching a maestro like that go out and do it, and you realize that it can be done.
Yes.
There was a time in my career where I thought, impossible. Once the crowd's dead, they're dead. And then you see a master do it right. You know, it's, again, we had a chance to
That happened to Van Dam and I one time. Rob Van Dam, we used to have some great matches, right? And we were somehow main event to Jake Roberts, his match, right?
Yeah.
And we had a good match and everything, another good match. We come back and we kind of pat each other on the back. Yeah, great match. And Jake comes up to us and said, hey guys, man, I don't know, I can top that. You guys did it all, right? And Robin looked at you, thanks.
Yeah.
So Jake goes out there, right? Like, I think, guy 3 times his size, right? Doesn't even do a quarter of what we do.
Yeah.
And the people are like on their feet.
Right.
Just follows every move.
Yeah.
He comes in the back. Rob and I look at you and say, teach us Jedi Master.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Give it to me, right? It's
Amazing.
Yeah, crazy.
That's how we got to be friends, Jake.
Yeah. Jake, another one of the master, obviously, like the greatest psychologist in the history of the business, right?
Learned so much from him.
Again, the fact that we had the chance to be in the ring with these guys, learn from these guys, and hopefully pass on some of the stuff they gave to us, right? But, well, I guess we're getting the hook here, right?
Okay.
So, hey, once again, sir, thank you very much.
Okay,
Always great
sir.
to see you, brother. Appreciate you being here with Appalachian Expose and the big ugly guy here giving us the hook. Ladies and gentlemen, the maestro is here with us today. Appreciate you being with us.